Welcome to BNI Advantage podcast number 10, where today we have an expert in podcasting. I'm Ryan Reid.
Hey, folks. Clay Morgan, Executive Director with BNI.
And we have Jim McCarthy, the expert. And what we're going to do is Clay and I are going to ask him questions on how you really can get ROI for your BNI and yourself through podcasting, social media. Jim, right off the bat, how many years have you been in radio, voiceover, and then podcasts?
Well, everything started right around the same time in radio and voiceover, around 96, 97. A lot of my background in radio was a little bit of on air at the beginning, but mostly in production, sitting in the production cave, as it were, and cutting my teeth on the different equipment that they had, as well as copy and all that fun stuff. So figure about, you're looking almost 30 years ago. It hurts.
You look too good for that 30 years ago.
Thank you. I'll take whatever I can get these days. I feel good too. I still feel like I'm in my 30s.
The way to be.
Yeah.
Jim, I got a question for you. As you think about what you've seen working with so many small business owners, so many folks that are getting the word out about their business. You see it both at networking meetings. You see it through digital media with podcasts and, right there in your studio. What do you feel like is the one most critical things that when people are trying to package their soundbite about their message that they really need to get clear about? That will really make a difference so that their audience, whether it's in person, right, or whether it's over the digital airwaves, like what we're doing here, like what do they need to do when they're preparing their message so that it really stands out to their audience they're trying to reach?
There was a notion that was written, Wizard of Ads guy, Roy H. Williams, is a very cerebral thinker when it comes to those types of concepts. And I highly recommend anybody that's in social media, in any sort of marketing, to read their books, the Wizard of Ads trilogy. He's got a school down in Austin called the Wizard Academy. I mean, we all three of us should take a trip and take a class. It's really mind-blowing. But to me, it's always just come down to clarity of singular topics. Even in BNI, in the presentation, when you're in the meeting, our chapter, you've got 30, 35 seconds. So your job is to make it easy for them to remember you and be able to find you referrals. It's not on them to try and figure out what you do. Same thing with radio advertising, social media. So many people every single day are bombarded. I believe now it's up to 7,500 to 10,000 messages a day. And we all have a part of our brain called Broca that filters out all those different messages. Broca's area of the brain is a concept that Roy H. Williams has talked about in the past. In social media, they call it what stops the scroll, with everyone's attention spans being so small these days, 3 to 5 seconds. What's going to surprise Broca to get them to stop and listen to the rest of the message? Because we're hearing so much, even in the podcast world. When you niche down into a specific, we call it specific is terrific in BNI, that really does matter. Simplicity, simplifying your message. As business owners, we tend to really bloviate and overcomplicate our message. And sometimes sitting across somebody that can hear what it is that you do and to say, look, simplify the message, make it as clear as possible. What problem do you solve? And is it a big enough problem that, multitudes of people can come to you to solve it? That's it. I mean, that's about the extent of marketing 101. What problem do you solve and how do you solve it? And why should they trust you to do so?
Jim, I know you've run the marketing power group we've worked on in the past is what's working and what's not. And some of the things are really expensive. They may work, but did you get your return on your investment? Can you help on what's working and what's not?
This, again, goes back to my radio days as well. There were a lot of clients that want guarantees that my ad's going to work. It always comes down to looking in the mirror. Am I presenting it right? Am I saying the right things? Typically, when it comes to marketing and what we talk about in those power team meetings are, I want to make sure everybody wants ROI. Well, first of all, you got to establish metrics, KPIs that you want to apply against what is ROI. If your goal is awareness, then, the more frequency, the more message that you put out into the market, whether it's paid, whether it's, just organic, whether it's just through social media, whether it's through hand-to-hand combat networking, through chambers or BNI chapters, the more you get your message out there, the better it should be. But again, it comes down to simplicity of message. What problem do you solve? What kind of business are you? Those types of things really do apply. Being able to listen to somebody and say, okay, here's a good message that you could try. I can't guarantee that it will work, but try things and then see what kind of response you get. If you're getting a lot more interested parties reaching out to you, then obviously something's working. But the two guarantees we always used to promise in radio is that A, your ad will run per the agreement you signed and the schedule that you bought, and you will be billed for it. Those are the two guarantees, and that's it.
Well, Jim, when it comes to networking, building relationships is the name of the game. And I think one of our best tools for doing that is asking questions about the other person that we're getting to know. And I think both in your previous life in radio and now with podcasting, what are some tips around asking good questions to get to build a relationship with folks through E&I? Would you offer to members that are just kind of thinking like, yeah, that's something that maybe is not a strength of theirs?
A lot of the same kind of consultation I offer podcasters, people that want to host a podcast. It's not dissimilar to when you're sitting down in front of somebody at a BNI, is really raw curiosity. If you listen to a podcast like Joe Rogan, for example, I mean, he's some people's cup of tea, maybe he's not for others, but he's a really good interviewer because of the nature of how just raw his curiosity is. He's not afraid to take rabbit hole and go down rabbit trails and stuff like that. Because sometimes, as I tell my clients, if you're interviewing somebody, those rabbit trails can really put some meat between the sandwich. I mean, they really do come up with some interesting topics. Same with a conversation. You're sitting down with somebody and they mention just offhandedly that they like something, maybe backgammon, and if there's something there, okay, what about backgammon really interests you? Honestly, it just comes down to journalistic questions. Who, what, why, when, where, how? Those types of questions can really just open up a Pandora's box of all sorts of information that, you can't put back in once you know. I love the question in B&I is, what's something someone doesn't know about you? That's a great question. And if you're not really sure, ChatGPT, man, they can really offer you a lot of different questions. Hey, I'm sitting down with Reid. He owns ICU Security. What are some really interesting questions I could ask Ryan? I've got a meeting with him in an hour. Some people just struggle with that, and sometimes those generate some pretty cool idea starters. I've done that before, especially going into a podcast interview.
I like that. From a BNI meeting perspective, how could you incorporate social media, shorts, or clips? How could you get started?
Well, I think everybody should be recording their featured presentations. There's a lot of credibility that goes with speaking in front of a crowd, especially if it's strategically planned. And BNI does a world-class job of, if you were to look into how to really plan your featured presentation, that could be really good social fodder, especially if you were to take the entire thing and put it up as one presentation, but also pulling the bite-sized short-form content that you strategically plant in that like for us, it's an 8-minute presentation in our chapter. Our company offers to other members that want to sit down with us to plan out their 8-minute, similar to like a 3-act play. The mistakes that a lot of members make is, hey, let me tell you everything about what I do and then explain to you how I do it. I hate to put it this way. No one cares. No one cares about how you do your job. I want to figure out how to best represent you and refer you, okay, and have the ability that if I'm putting my name and reputation on the line to give you a referral, don't make me look bad. And your featured presentations are your best opportunity to strategically sit down with somebody and map it out, especially timing it and making sure you're hitting the marks at the right time and things of that nature, practicing it, rehearsing it ahead of time. Those types of things can be treasure troves of social content, because if you get, just from a production standpoint, someone on a camera in front of you shooting, you doing your thing with heads in the foreground and stuff like that, and one from the back showing a whole room of people, that's a huge credibility factor. Speaking to a room of people, giving something of a presentation that's interesting and something that's engaging. That's the way I would go about it.
Jim, along those lines, we're talking a lot here about messaging. We're talking about ways that folks can stand out in a room to create that resonance for their brand. And, I think like so many facets of life, you get back what you put into it, right? What are some of the things that you would say folks ought to put into crafting their message so that they're creating more of that? I know you were just talking about like the featured presentation. You introduced that concept of thinking about it like in the 3 stages. Talk to me a little bit more about, from your vantage point, what are some of the things that you recommend other folks do in terms of like behind the scenes work to craft their message, simplify their marketing piece so that they do stand out, specifically at BNI, right? You've got the weekly presentation, you've got the featured presentation, and then you've got the one-to-ones.
We talk about in the gains profile, the previous 10 to 15 customers, is to call your clients. It's a good reason for calling them, checking up on them, following up, seeing if there's anything you do, but also asking, hey, just out of curiosity, if you were to recommend me to somebody, how would you do that? What would you say? Record the conversation if you can, or at least take notes. And in those conversations, you'll find common threads, words that they use. How do I simplify that message as quickly as I can to even just lean into a weakness? Sometimes when you have a candor, you admit a negative to elicit a positive from a prospect. It can go a long way. I've seen it happen many a time.
Because I tell you, I think, one, folks are so busy. And I think it can be really, like you said, because you know your own business and you're so passionate about what you do, it can be really easy to just lean back on that expertise. And those are a couple of really, I think, powerful tools that folks can use to get much clearer on their message. Thank you for sharing.
Jim, how does someone get started getting involved with podcasts? Obviously, you would be an easy referral for that. If they're interested in starting to cut video, maybe to stick on their website, or they're interested in advertising in podcasts, what also would be the dollar amount? I think a lot of people think it's a lot more than it really is.
I think right now we've got a special going on, so to speak, that if you wanted to come in and just record content and you've got everything mapped out that you want to say and all the different topics that you want to talk about, we're as low as $97 an hour to come in and just sit in front of a camera. We'll record you, give you deliverables at the end, the raw video files, or we could talk about further other packages we could certainly flesh out and edit for you. If anybody's looking into starting a podcast, what's your interest? What are your hobbies? What's going to appeal to a whole bunch of other people? Something you can just, you could do 5, 10, 20 minutes just talking about maybe some sort of piece of news that popped up, and you could really create a brand around a podcast, talking about bow hunting. Different types of bows. You could attract, sponsorships to the table, all sorts of stuff. It's typically not about the business you want to promote, but more your hobbies that resonate with other people, powered by your business. Hey, if you like the podcast, guys, make sure if there's something that we can offer you, help you out with. I also run an insurance agency. This helps us keep the podcast going. Go check out soandsoinsurance.com and let us know how we can help you. That's the best way to go about it, in my opinion. To answer the question.
Absolutely. Clay, you want to do the final?
Very well. Yeah, absolutely. So, Jim, we really appreciate you sharing some of your insights and your expertise with us today. My final question for you is, so often within the small business community, folks are thinking about what is the right footprint for me to be in terms of trying to get my message out there about my company. For somebody who's thinking about a podcast, maybe social media, what are 1 or 2 specific marketing suggestions that you would offer to that small business owner that they could pick? Is it a podcast? Is it social media? Is it something else?
Right. This is something that I attribute to Gary Vaynerchuk. I'm a huge follower of his. He, most know him as Gary V. He talks about understanding your platform is. You could be a great writer. You could be a great on camera. You could just do voice. Start doing something, and start by, I always tell people, if you have no idea where to go, start with frequently asked questions, whatever the podcast is going to be about, or your business. Identifying the audience, who would be attracted to this. Again, for example, many, many years ago, I had a real estate agent and a mortgage broker come to me and say, we want to do a radio show. They were buying brokered time, which technically means that they're buying it on a weekend. I think they were buying 5 a.m. on a Sunday. And he said, we really want to make, sure that this thing has legs. I said, well, what's your intent? Well, obviously to get buyers to the table. I said, I hate to tell you, I'm not sure, A, how many people are up listening to brokered time that's trying to sell something at 5 a.m. on a Sunday. I said, so first thing in order, I would make it evergreen and make it a podcast. Second of all, we got to figure something else out. I said, because you're just going to be setting money on fire. Your biggest ad spend in that scenario are the promos they're going to be running during the week to promote your show. I said, those promos are going to get the most eyes and ears in this case. But making sure that you turn that into a podcast. And I said, guys, I think you're looking at the wrong audience. Unless you're an investor or a real estate agent, I don't know anybody who would go out of their way to listen to a real estate show. So why don't we just think about agents and other people who need mortgages and someone to refer mortgages to, and other people who do mortgages that, hey, you're a broker, you need more mortgage agents to come to the hive to sell for you. And same thing for you being the broker in the real estate agency. And then you just kind of make a show about the news, training, all those different things. And they did it for about 5 years. So figuring out what the platform is essentially a personal question. What are you comfortable doing? And start there. Write a blog. Go back to blog. Blogs still perform. You could simply put something up on Facebook every day, thoughts or whatever. Just start somewhere. And I would typically, frequently asked questions is a good place to start with any business. Because you can start building content off of, let's say, one question resonates. You get a whole comment feed full of comments. There are other topics within those comments that you could address on another video, blog, or audio piece. So it's just a matter of starting, getting comfortable, understanding that the beginning's going to be a hot mess. That's okay. Failing forward, that's what you got to do. And a lot of people just say, well, there's so many other people talking about this. Well, it's not you. And that makes a big difference. Your friends, family, typically that's where you kind of start. They might pay attention. Maybe what you're saying is so profound. They share it with somebody and they know you by that family member, so on and so forth. And it kind of takes off like that, but you never know until you try. So just start somewhere.
Thank you so much, Jim, for being on BNI Advantage today, and Clay. We'll see you guys on the next BNI Advantage.